All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our ad hoc community meeting. Today is Tuesday, February 14th. Happy Valentine's Day. This is our love letter to you, our contributors. We are having this community meeting because, simply there was a request for it in the channel and it had been long enough and we have enough to talk about that we wanted to go ahead and have one. So we have an agenda that's already spec'd out. We're going to start with status updates. But before we do that, I see that we have all of our maintainers on the call, and I'm going to ask them to quickly introduce themselves. By the way, my name is Nigel. I am the community manager for Contour. But please take it away. I'll pass it to Sanjay first.
Hey, I'm Sanjay Bhatia. I work for VMware. I've been working on Contour for I think a little while now, maybe a year or two. Worked for VMware. Previously worked a little bit with Shoutouts on working on Envoy stuff. But great to meet you all. Pass it out to Steve.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Steve Chris, maintainer on Contour. I also work at VMware with Sanjay, and I've been working on Contour for a few years now, and it's great to see all these faces, all of you who are users, contributors, etc. So it's great to see everyone. And I'll pass it off to Tero if he wants to jump in.
Yeah, hi, my name is Tero Chdhry. I'm working with Ericsson, and I've been working with Contour also a couple of years. My main interest is in security area, and I'm also glad to see so many of you here today.
Yeah, thank you so much. Winnie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, yes, I work at VMware, but I'm not a maintainer, so.
Winnie is also very instrumental in us getting Contour out to you all. So thank you all for joining us. We wanted to start with letting you know that Contour 1.24 is out. If you were not aware of that, it's out, it's available. Please go try it. We have it linked here. We wanted to do some contributor shout outs. And so we have those listed there, and we did as well in the email. We've been seeing an uptick in contributors and in design doc submissions, and it's very encouraging. And we are very grateful for that and want to do whatever we can to keep those coming in. So thank you. Is there anything that you all wanted to say, any of the maintainers about 1.24? Any updates, any big features you want to point out?
I did just want to call out that we've already shipped a patch release 1.24.1 that just has a bump to the Envoy version that's packaged. So if you are looking to upgrade to 1.24, definitely look at 1.24.1. But the majority of the changelog and the feature highlights will be in that 1.24.0 release notes.
Perfect.
One thing I did want to mention about 1.24 as well, and it kind of relates to future plans with HTTP proxy and whatnot. Do you mind if I share my screen real quick?
Yeah, go for it.
Y'all can see this screen. I already have it open. So particularly this release note here could be relevant to users of HTTP proxy. Just the general summary is that we found some bugs with how we validated include conditions on HTTP proxies. So we started tightening up that validation and making sure that things were more correct. And we've updated our implementation on that. We have, this may cause some proxies to go invalid where they weren't before. And you may see some things that were previously working somehow, kind of without any error messages or sort of silently configuration overriding each other. Those should might now be marked as invalid. You might see some more orphan proxies. So if you do reference this major change here, I think this is one of our major changes. And also we have a section in here for future plans. So keep on the lookout for future things there around inclusion and in HTTP proxy, which we may talk about later also in this meeting if we have time. So Steve, do you have any other specific release notes you wanted to call out here?
Nothing specific. I think, yeah, take a read through. I would just reiterate that it's great to see, you know, all the community contributions here, and we had some really some sizable features that were contributed by you all. So appreciate that those contributions to the project.
Yep.
Amazing. Well, thank you both. So the next thing that we have is that the roadmap has been updated. It had been there and accessible, but it wasn't necessarily up to date with how the plans for the project are now. And so we have updated the roadmap, and I'd encourage you all to take a look at that. Do we want to go through that right now, or we just want to leave that for an exercise for folks?
Yeah, we can take a quick look at it. I think, and Sanjay, I'll let you jump in as well. But I think, you know, we're trying to highlight some of the major items that we're looking ahead to over the year. I don't think we're trying to capture every single individual feature on here. So it's, you know, it's not an exhaustive roadmap, but this gives you an idea of some of the things that that we as the maintainers and the community think are important. If there are major items that that folks are interested in seeing be prioritized, please feel free to raise issues or PRs here, and we can discuss them. I guess I can cover the first couple of items here, and then other folks can jump in. So we are continuing to build out our support for Gateway API. We're been working on this implementation for a while, and we're largely conformant at this point. Two of the items that we know we want to tackle in the first half of this year are first implementing gRPC route, which is a new route type in Gateway API for routing to gRPC backend services. And so this work is underway, and we should have this merged, I would expect, by the upcoming 1.25 release. And then the next item that's listed here is supporting an arbitrary numbers of listeners per gateway. So historically, Contour has supported 2 listeners, right? So one HTTP listener and one HTTPS listener. With Gateway API, gateways can be configured with any number of listeners on different ports using different protocols. And so this is something that we don't currently support in our Gateway API implementation. We still support a maximum of essentially 2 listening ports. And so we are looking to add support for this. So there's a design doc up that I published a week or 2 ago. We're still sorting through some of the open questions here, but ultimately the goal is to basically just to keep up with the Gateway API spec and be conformant. And so that necessitates this support. So if you have any input on this, feel free to read through and leave comments on the PR. And then did anyone else want to jump in and talk about some of these other items? Sanjay, you want to cover any of them?
Yeah, we've got some great community contributions coming up for some of these bigger features that the maintainers haven't had the necessarily the time to work on, but we've been interested and asked about by the community. So thank you for the contributions on these. We've got some design docs up and some gonna get some hopefully some implementations up soon. The first of which tracing support. So being able to configure a tracing service that Envoy will send trace information about all the requests that it receives, and integrate with existing trace IDs, other tracing platforms. Something that has been talked about in Contour, and changes in Envoy relatively recently have enabled that. So thank you for the contributions on that, as well as being able to use the source IP or forwarded IPs of requests to block traffic, allow or deny traffic. So we've got a design document up for that, and we're reviewing that. Thank you. That's again another community contribution. So great to see the larger features, people being able to contribute larger features. And please let us know if we can do anything else to help you all. If you have these larger features that you want to implement, contribute design docs and implementations for those. The rest of the items, a few of these are important, maybe not exactly planned immediately, but of course, if you need any of these remaining items, or if you have other items that you want to add to be well defined in the priority list, definitely make an issue in the main Contour repo and put your description of what you need there, and possibly make a PR to this community repository, and we can try to get it on the roadmap. Yeah, anything else there?
Well, that was a great overview, Sanjay. Yeah, and these are here for you to check out. The issues are linked. Please add comments if you have anything that you want to add about these things. The next item that we have is talking about our engagement with KubeCon EU. Right now, we have several things planned. We are going to give a maintainer track update. Well, we're planning to give a maintainer track update to talk about where the project is right now and the future of the project and the community. We also have signed up for ContribFest, which is something new that they started with the Detroit KubeCon, which gives us a 90-minute slot of dedicated folks working on Contour. And so we're going to split those folks into two groups, the folks who've never used Contour before and the folks that have experience with API gateways, to talk about how we're going to be incorporating those features into Contour. So if you're going to be at KubeCon and you would like to attend our session, we would love to have you there. Having more experienced folks with Contour is only going to help us. And then there's a Gateway API extensions talk. Who wants to cover that one?
Oh yeah, this was a shameless plug. Myself and one of the maintainers of Envoy Gateway are planning on giving a talk about Gateway API extensions, kind of following on from the kind of introductory talk about Gateway API that some of the maintainers of the upstream project gave at KubeCon North America this past year. So this talk will be from the perspective of, I guess, implementers of the Gateway API. So hopefully we have some relevant stuff for y'all to look at. And if you're curious about Gateway API, how it's going to progress in the future beyond just the core like routing functionality, how different implementations may take that. So it'd be great if you came to this talk. But yeah, shameless plug.
Awesome. Thank you, Sanjay. Hopefully we'll see some of you folks there. Let us know if you're going to be at KubeCon EU. We definitely want to meet up with you. Perhaps we'll have some stuff that we can give you for being active members in our community. So yeah, definitely let us know. So we have now our discussion topics, which anyone can add to. Being conscious of time, we're going to limit these initially to 5 minutes. So I may jump in a little bit if we need to cover the other things, and we can always circle back if we have more time, but just be aware that we have things to get through. So if you could, stick within the time limit, that would be really helpful. So the first item we have there is talking about the 1.25 release.
Yeah, I can jump in here. So we're underway for the 1.25 development cycle. For those who aren't aware, we've moved to a quarterly release cycle, and so 1.25 is scheduled to be released on April 30th. So that gives us roughly 2.5 months at this point. And so yeah, we have a lot of items in this release. I know that many of you have submitted design docs, and we're working through reviews and getting those merged and getting onto implementations. So please bear with us as we're trying to get through reviews for all these items and keep all this work moving forward. But as I said, we do have a little more than 2 months to get all of this delivered. So we do have a good amount of time still. Looking at the milestones, a great way to see what's in scope. We also have a project board set up that I'll drop the link to here, which is another helpful way to look at this information. But yeah, if there is other work that you're interested in seeing get done for the project, feel free to file issues, add comments mentioning that you're interested in working on things.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve. The next item we were talking about was community meetings going forward. We are open to doing these more often, to starting up a regular cadence of these if you all feel it would be useful. So we appreciate that the requests happen in the Kubernetes channel. You can also, if you have like direct feedback or ideas that you want to submit about these, you can ping me in the Kubernetes Slack as well at Nigel. But yeah, if you all are interested, we can start these back up maybe at like a monthly or quarterly cadence, quarterly to match with the releases, monthly a little more often if we have agenda items that we want to work through, if you all feel it'll be good to meet synchronously, and then from there figuring out time zones and all that stuff to have these meetings. So this is an ongoing discussion that we want to have. I think the best thing to do right now is to open an issue about it in the community repo and then get some comments there. And then I'll link that back here in the meeting notes. But yeah, if there's general interest in us restarting the community meetings, we are very happy to do that. I want to hand it over now to the exploration for WASM and Contour.
Yeah, and I add a comment early today, and this is some summary for the questions, and some of them we reference from the ISTO WebAssembly. Maybe we can talk about what is block issue.
Yeah, so in general with WASM, and I think we had similar stuff come up with Lua, people wanting to add support for like arbitrary Lua scripting with Contour. Yeah, the main blocker generally, I guess, is how to like safely deliver code to Envoy that it's not going to take down, like in the general case, right? Where you have maybe a multi-tenant cluster or multi-tenant installation of Contour, where an update to a resource that causes Envoy to reject it can actually take down a lot of traffic because things are configured in the filter chain for a listener. They'll actually be able to, if it's like a plain HTTP, the filter added to the plain HTTP filter chain, you can actually take down everyone's HTTP traffic because that's all within one individual Envoy resource. So we've kind of punted all these things to say like, okay, we need to solve the NAC, general NAC problem first, which is taking into account when Envoy sends and returns a NAC to Contour, what do we actually do with that? We've done some little explorations and spikes on things, and I don't know, it's a little hard to say. It's for example, Istio itself I don't believe they actually handle NACs or really report them very well unless you enable a specific feature like a status reporting feature. It is a little difficult it's going to require a significant change to Contour to kind of make things, processing of resource updates and configuration generation, make it more synchronous, because the interleaving of status updates or the interleaving of configuration changes when we're doing things completely asynchronously kind of makes it hard to like undo something that was nacked, for example, or get you back to a good configuration. But yeah, sorry, did you have any more questions and whatnot about that? I apologize, we haven't probably read through your comments super detailed yet. I would say, long story short, I think that's one of the main blockers, and like, how do we generalize a way to deliver, like in the WASM case, to deliver code to Envoy, right? Like, it expands the gap between two personas, I think, because if we're talking about actually changing how Envoy is deployed to load different volumes or something into the Envoy pod, that's a different persona than just the person, maybe the developer who wants to process their requests differently. But I think, so Tyrus, you mentioned something about the escape hatch idea, which is related to this.
Yeah, I think like Clayton can talk more of that. I want to ask more on the persona thing. I guess like I do see the collision. There's two personas. There's one that is like the cluster operator that runs a multi-tenant infrastructure. And there is like the big infrastructure. I think like, me and Clayton working for Reddit, we have like a big infrastructure, which is like completely centralized single tenant, but it's big enough that we want to do customizations. So I guess like the taking a step back, like what is the security model? And like, is there a case where features will be added to Contour on a security model where like, on a multi-tenant infrastructure that might not work that well, or it might inherently have security risks, but it would work well for like the single tenant big infrastructure that want to do this.
Yeah, that's a problem. I think it's definitely possible to do that with, but I guess the documentation and the messaging around how to use these sorts of features will have to be very clear if we do that route. I can't think of immediately anything that we've already got that is kind of like, we don't really recommend you to use this in this scenario, but it's very good if you do it in this other scenario.
Because I think Envoy has this in their security model, they have like this thing, like, some filters are secure, like against trusted upstream, some are not. So this could be like a similar type of security model of like, security without trusted, like, WASM providers not secure. And that's the security model distinction, basically.
Yeah, and it kind of spans like security and just like operational correctness, right? Like, and it's, you could think of it as like I guess you should think of it as like a security thing, because it could be a bad actor, it could be mistakes that cause you to take down your whole website's traffic, for example. All the routes get and all the different virtual hosts you might have configured get messed up. But
yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, on the WASM, on this in general, I guess I think if people are interested in this and want and are able to commit resources to helping out with this, that would be awesome. I think on Steve and I's plate for the upcoming release, I think we've got a lot of content already. But yeah, this is one of those kind of, this falls into the class of issues where in general, people want a little bit more control about processing requests in a custom way. So how can we deliver that a good experience for everyone with that? I think it's worth looking at also this other idea here as well. Like, is this another way that we can go? Yeah, similar concept, I think. Is there anything specific about WASM itself that makes it required, or is it just an implementation of this idea that people really like to use and has maybe usability across different implementations, different use cases?
Okay, I will give more comments on the related issues, and maybe we can get some improvement for the security and the next.
Okay, yeah, yeah, we can keep chatting on some of the details here. We'll probably add some more comments here, but yeah, definitely thanks for bringing it up in priority and whatnot.
We've got a raised hand here, Sanjay.
Sorry, say that again.
We've got a raised hand here. Clayton, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I can, since I raised the issue for the external processing filter. I mean, I agree. I think WASM would be really good to have, but I do acknowledge that there is some serious design discussion that we need to have around that. And I think it's still a long way out before it actually lands, or if it lands at all. And we at Reddit would really like to have an escape hatch in case we want to, have some custom logic before our requests go to our backends. And I was thinking, would you guys be open to having support for the external processing filter from Envoy as like a standby until we decide on WASM? And the reason I think is that we already have similar design already, with the external auth and rate limit filter. So I think design wise, it shouldn't be much different than that. And I'm happy to implement it if we get enough interest in this.
Yeah, thanks for filing the issue, Clayton. And yeah, I agree that given that we have already implemented external services that are similar to the external processing filter, it's a fairly well-established design within Contour at this point. So that's definitely I would say a point in favor of this kind of extension mechanism. I know I'm not entirely clear on what the status of it is in Envoy, if it's kind of stable at this point, or I think it's still under active development. Is that right?
I think so, and it hasn't been updated for a couple of years. So it has been under active development. I'm not sure if there is active development. So something I might want to bring to the Envoy community as well. Got it. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think we need to discuss a little bit more, but I definitely think it's got potential. I think we'd be interested in hearing a little bit more about what the intended use cases would be for this. I know, historically we've had folks that have come and asked for these mechanisms in the past, right, with Lua scripting and WASM and various other things. And one of the questions that we've always tried to ask is, what are the use cases that you would use this for? And are they not things that could just be exposed as kind of first class API features within Contour? So, if you could provide some more context on that and just what are the use cases and why wouldn't they fit into the core API, I think that'd be helpful for us in terms of kind of justifying it.
I think one example I could give is very specific. It's going to be specific to different organizations, but one example that I could think of is probably we want the request to have some pre-processing and decide experimentation on the request to show our users, and this experimentation would be a separate service running as an external processing filter, which would do some logic on the request and inject headers downstream for the services to show page A or page B.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're necessarily in a position to say yes or no right now, but I think we can continue the discussion on it. I certainly need to do a little bit more research and reading to understand it better. But yeah, I think we should continue the discussion. I guess the other thing that I think would be useful is perhaps just stepping back and looking at, the various kind of extension mechanisms that Envoy offers, external processing and WASM and Lua, and maybe just do a bit of a comparative analysis between them, because I don't know that we necessarily want to support every possible extension mechanism. And so, if we can agree on one that meets most of the needs, I think that would be better. So Chdhry, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I want to basically echo what you said, Steve, is that there's way more extension points. There's Go filters right now, arbitrary Go support filters for Envoy audit right now. There's even the option of like writing custom filters and saying that, like, how do we add custom filters, and like you run your own Envoy image, which is already configurable, but I wanted my own image to run this specific thing all the time, all this filter. So it's more of like, I agree. Like we should think about this more like generally and figure out what works for everyone. Support one way of like injecting arbitrary code. The one thing that I want to say is that external processing, especially in the data path, might be expensive for a lot of people, and a lot of people have been migrating from the gRPC code to make things in process. So figuring out a mechanism of having this happening in process is also like, there is a performance penalty with external proc, which at some point it becomes like too much if it's like in the hot path of your data path.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah, so I'm just trying to think about kind of what next steps are. I mean, I do think if we could come up with that kind of comparative analysis across the different approaches, I think that would be useful for providing information to help make a decision here. You can't necessarily volunteer someone to sign up for that, but if anyone is really interested in pushing this forward, I think that would be an area where we could start to make some forward progress. Brad, I see you've got your hand up there.
You're muted right now.
There we go. Okay, so just from and you guys probably can tell in the Slack channel that I am really a newbie here to your product, but from a newbie's perspective, from just listening to what you guys talk about, exposing that kind of functionality, the support will be huge. It's maybe this is obvious, but just for me, there's one thing that's missing from Contra that I could really use. And right away I was listening to what you guys say, and I'm like, I could do that with script. But then I'm not experienced in Luna, nor am I experienced in the technical part of getting in the data path, especially in a website that's high performance, a lot of connections. And do I take my whole infrastructure down by a poor script? That's all my responsibility. But I know what I'm going to do is go to Slack and right away say, this doesn't work. Your system is broken. So all I want to throw out there is adding that kind of functionality. One thing to consider will be the support of it. And that, again, it might be obvious, but I thought I would throw it out there from a newbie's perspective.
No, you're totally right, Fred. You're totally right. And that's definitely another reason why we haven't done it in the past. But Steve, go ahead.
Nope, I was going to say the same thing. I mean, we've had discussions on this topic, over the past years, and that's always been one of the pushbacks, I think, from past maintainers is that you are just potentially increasing the support burden, right, and kind of potentially allowing users to shoot themselves in the foot. So I think that the trickiest thing here is finding that balance between giving users the power and flexibility they need, but also trying to provide as many guardrails as possible so that folks can't shoot themselves in the foot, can't take down a multi-tenant installation. That's really the tricky part of this.
Sounds like that was a pretty good discussion about those two items. Does anybody else have anything they want to say regarding those things? Steve, there's a question here. Is multi-tenant a requirement? Or Sanjay?
Yeah, I
Is
guess.
multi-tenant.
Sorry, go ahead, Steve. Go ahead.
Just specifically for when we're talking about extension mechanisms, Sotiris.
Yeah, for the escape hatches, like basically, should the solution that we consider, like, be working really well and have like security mode for multi-tenants, or is this something that is going to be a best effort? Basically, is there another bullet point in the question marks, like multi-tenant support, and how important this is? Is this a blocker or not, basically?
Yeah, I'm not sure that I have a strong answer. I mean, I think it's definitely something that we should compare across the different approaches, and to the extent that we can have support for multi-tenancy, I think that's something we want to have in Contour. But if the answer is that no, we can't do it, then it's just something that we look at.
Yeah, I think we found recently, again, many examples over this. If you, even if it's not intended behavior, what is it, Hiram's law? Steve, that you sent, reminded me of again, but like if it's there, people will use it. So even with good documentation and the best intentions, we may find ourselves in some sort of sticky situations. Yeah, if we find whatever specific situations we shouldn't use certain features, we can definitely see what we can do about enabling or disabling things, or make things opt-in or whatever, what have you. But yeah, I think thank you, by the way, also thank you, Wilson, for your research and whatnot on the WASM issue. I think that'll be a good input again for maybe another, I guess it depends on who wants to take this up. We definitely love to have a community member take this up, but if someone wanted to maybe file an issue and start a kind of a comparative discussion on different different extension mechanisms like WASM, Lua, etc., things listed here, anything else that Envoy might provide, and see how we can move forward. It seems like people are generally enthusiastic about this, so something that we can help push forward.
Okay, no problem. So maybe we will talk about the Lua and the external process and so on. Maybe we can have more information provided to you, and I will comment to the issue, and we can go ahead.
That'd be great. Yeah, thank you for your help and furthering the discussion.
Yeah, we're coming up on time, so I definitely want to say thank you again to everyone for being here, for being active members of the community, for requesting this meeting. This was super helpful, and yeah, for providing community support and these comments. It's really helpful. We're going to be trying to get out like regular communications to y'all, more regular communications, and I also did post the issue. If you have things you want to share, thoughts you want to share about the Contour community meetings, I've linked it in the document, as well as putting it in the chat there. We have 2 minutes. How long is the support question? Okay, go for it.
It has to do with the heap memory and the option to set the heap memory and do heap memory cleanup. And very simply this, if that condition is not set, does Contour / Envoy, and I'm not sure where it happens, does it do it? does it do heap memory cleanup on its own without that fixed heap memory size set? And here's the reason I'm asking is my application uses long-standing WebSocket connections between 6 and 8 hours. And what I'm seeing is that the heap memory is growing over time. And what I'm worried about and what I think I'm experiencing is a denial of the connection, because the heap, I don't want to say the heap memory is dirty. I don't even know if that's a thing. But it does tend to creep over time. And so I'm wondering whether to enable that feature and fix a heap memory so that cleanup is forced, or does cleanup happen without it being set? That's it.
Taro, I know you worked on this feature. Do you happen to have any thoughts here?
Yeah, I do not have any answer now. I did some experiment and this is just calling or setting the parameters that are available in Envoy Overload Manager, and I think that I didn't even check that how the memory looks time like on a period of time before enabling this. So I'm according to my recollection, I didn't even test it. So when working with this, I only was checking after enabling or using these using the overload manager.
So do we need an issue to track this one?
I'm happy to open that and put some context around it.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Okay. By the
Um,
way, thank you very much, folks. This is an amazing product. The host networking component to this product, freaking amazing. I just want to throw that out there. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for being here. The recording will get posted and we'll send out a link to it so our community members that weren't able to make this time slot will be able to benefit from the conversations that were had here. So yeah, let us know in that issue about how you feel about restarting community meetings, and hopefully we'll see y'all in the channel or like this again soon. Take care and we'll see you next time.
Thanks a lot, folks. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.